Hi there, it's October 16th, and today we are beginning a new letter of Paul. This is Paul's first letter to Timothy, and we're reading chapter 1, verses 1 to 20. Now, 1 Timothy is the first of three letters that kind of sit together in the scriptures, 1 and 2 Timothy and Titus. Traditionally, they're called the pastoral epistles. Scholars have suggested that Paul wasn't actually the author of these books, basically because of a difference in vocabulary between these and previous letters. But there's a historical argument that suggests that they definitely are, because very early practitioners of the gospel, early teachers such as Polycarp and Irenaeus in the 1st century or 2nd century, referred to these letters and knew of them. And therefore it's taken on the basis of historicity, but also on the basis that such personal details are here in these letters, and there are references to people who were connected with Timothy, that it's hard to see why someone who was writing a pseudo epistle would have included some of these details. And so we can be sure that there is a Pauline element here. There is the hand of Paul is in these letters. So Paul here in 1 Timothy starts off by reminding Timothy he's been left there. He's in Ephesus. Ephesus is the port on the far west end of Turkey, in those days in Asia Minor, while Paul has gone over to mainland Europe, to Macedonia, which is in the north of Greece. And so he's left Timothy basically to look after the church there, to make sure that the church is in order. And he particularly has left Timothy there because there is some division going on within the church in Ephesus, within the community in Ephesus. And some of it seems to do with our old friend, the teaching of the Judaizers, or the ones who want to impose the law on those who are believing Jesus and make the law a necessity for those who are living in grace. And so Paul basically says, look, stop those who are trying to get people into endless genealogies, because actually Judaizers sometimes weren't just into the law itself, but they had all sorts of extra bits and pieces, extra twiddles that they'd added on to do with angels and demons, which was kind of veering towards the later teachings of gnosis, of special layers of spiritual life that you needed to get through to get to God. And Paul says, no, the law is not there for that, says Paul. The law is there basically to identify sin. The law is there to put boundaries around mankind, but the law can't save. The law can't rescue people. So teaching the law in this way, making it some kind of idol in itself, is not in line with the teaching of Jesus. And then Paul goes on to talk about the gift of grace that has been received. And he says that he himself, Paul himself, has been appointed to that service of God, even though he himself was once a persecutor of God's people. In fact, he points out how amazing God's grace is, that it has called someone like Paul, who he calls himself the chief of sinners, the main offender, the chief offender against God in this whole area. And he has come to save sinners. And you can look at me and see how amazing his salvation, how amazing his grace is. It's actually by God's grace that we are rescued, not by keeping the things of the law and trying to be justified through them. And so Jesus has demonstrated even through Paul the full extent of his grace, and Paul becomes a model of that forgiveness. And then Paul kind of gives a poem of praise to Jesus at this point. And he does this a few times in this letter. But here he says, to the King, immortal, invisible, the only wise God, be glory and honour forevermore. Amen. And there's this praise that rises up from Paul's heart. And then he just gives at the end of this chapter, this first chapter, an instruction to Timothy to live in accordance with the prophecies that were made about him. Timothy, it seems, is a young man. Maybe he's one who has looked down on a bit by the older people in the community, someone who's an incomer that has come in from Lystra, further east in Asia Minor, and he's been put in by Paul. Maybe there was a running down, a degrading of his call, but Paul actually wants Timothy to know that he's there by God's call. He's there by the words of prophecy, by God's instructions that have been spoken. And he encourages him to fight the good fight of faith, both against those who are giving wrong instruction and those who are looking down on him. And he includes in that Hymenaeus and Alexander, who two are named. We don't know exactly what it was that they were doing that was unhelpful, but Paul names them and says, Timothy, you're there by the word of God. You're there by prophetic input. It's sad to think that so early on in the church's journey, this kind of turmoil was arising. But Paul is speaking clearly to Timothy and saying, Timothy, God has appointed you to this. Walk in integrity, walk holding on to God, model something for the church, and particularly release the church into the grace of God and put a barrier on the teaching of law as being justifying. And we too need to be learning from this, that God has done an amazing thing through Jesus, who has rescued us. He's delivered us from the curse of the law. He's delivered us from the need to try and do things to justify ourselves. And so we can also, with Paul, say, now to the King, eternal, immortal, invisible, the only wise God, be glory and honour throughout the ages. Amen. Have a very good October 16th.